Greetings there, everyone. This is The Crap Gamer, and I want to say what's up to all my crapaholics out there. I appreciate all the new subscribers and everything like that, man. I'm growing. My channel's blowing up like crazy, and that's thanks to you guys. I really appreciate it. Today, I was going to talk a little bit about the debate between the power of the PS4 and the Xbox One. Now, I know what you're thinking. This would be a really short debate if I went the traditional route and just said, okay, based on what's presented, which one's more powerful. Obviously, the PlayStation 4 is more powerful than the Xbox One. We all know that. As an Xbox One owner and a fan, and just a gaming fan in general, what I wanted to talk a little bit about is which one has the bigger upside for future implications. And that's where I think things get a little bit muddy, where I think the PS4, basically everything that's available on the PS4 right now as far as power wise is what's going to be the entire console life, whereas we see already with the Xbox One, Microsoft has been able to slightly add more power, overclock it with these updates and things like that, and it's been steadily getting more powerful. They they still don't know exactly what makes the Xbox One tick. We're getting these faster SDKs all the time. I mean, this is early on in the generation, and we're already getting, faster SDKs and things like that, which is, if you don't know what an SDK is, it's a software development kit, basically a dev kit. And the ones that, for the games that we've been seeing on the Xbox One so far, from launch until now, and probably even for a good part of the rest of the year, were the ones that were made on development kits that were out originally, before Microsoft upped the GPU, before Microsoft upped the CPU the first time, and certainly before the latest updates, which are hitting now. Now we're starting to see some of the benefits from that will come from games like Evolve, Alien Isolation, Murdered Soul Suspect, and Wolfenstein, which are all using the newer SDKs. The same thing with Sniper Elite, which all these games are supposed to output on the Xbox One at 1080p, and most in 60 frames per second. So I think that you're going to see a lot more parity where that comes from. And also, I think the bigger upside for the Xbox One in the future is they have more allocated RAM to use, even though it might be a little bit slower. You know what I'm saying? They're using 5 gigs available for games and 3 set aside for the multiple OS. Now, one of those gigs could be flexible, so you might be looking at possibly 6 gigs of RAM for the Xbox One to use in games, and plus the ESRAM, which basically, I know I've talked about tiled resources before with Next Gen 720 and those guys, and basically what that means is they can store basically about 6 gigs of textures and files and things like that into this ESRAM, and it takes less strain off of the regular RAM and things like that. So it makes it so that you use what's necessary. Like it's not using RAM if you're not actually doing that specific thing. So the closer you get to something, the better it looks, but it doesn't need to look that good from far away, whereas in traditional RAM resources, it's always there and always taking up those resources. Now, I do feel a little bit vindicated, and I got to do a little fist bump to all the motherfuckers out there that were like, hey, you're going to eat some crow because Thief is running just as bad on Xbox One. We now know the Digital Foundry article said the PS4 had to strain everything it could get to get 1080p out of that. They didn't do any anti-aliasing in the PlayStation 4 version. It dropped frame rate a lot worse than the Xbox One version. Basically, the PS4 is already struggling, and we've already heard from the developers coming out of Sony there that the order is pushing the PS4 to the limit already, and that's something that we haven't heard with the Xbox One yet. It seems like that's going to be able to grow more as the generation goes on. And now I don't think it's going to be like turn out to be more powerful or anything like that, but I just think that along with tiled resource and things like that, you're going to see very impressive games, and maybe even games that are going to look better along the lines of the PS4 games, the counterparts, because once these developers get a grasp of some of these things, and once we start to see what developers can do with the cloud and those resources, we're going to see a lot of very interesting games on the Xbox One. Now, I'm not putting down the PS4 and saying it's crap or anything like that. I think the PS4 is a nice, powerful system, and I think Sony went into this generation saying, hey, we got to copy what Microsoft did because they were successful with the 360, which the 360 was successful because they had the superior multi-platform games. The last few years of the 360 weren't really heavy with the exclusives, but when you have the good multi-plats and things like that, people are going to buy your console anyway. Sony isn't going to be able to afford to do the exclusives like they did with the PS3. So if you bought a PlayStation 4 expecting that to have exclusives like the PS3, you're going to be in for a sad, sad shock because they can't afford it. If we've learned anything from this past week and all their closings and of stores and laying off developers, it's that they're going more on relying on indie games who can self-publish and free-to-play games and very few AAA titles. You're not going to see those big AAA titles because nobody was buying them anyway, for one thing. And the other thing is they can't afford them. They can't afford to advertise them. They can't afford to make them. They just canceled their new sci-fi open world game, which sounded pretty awesome, but now that'll never see the day of light. So basically, they want to have the superior multi-platform games, which is why they made the PS4 so easy to develop for, and they want, you know, the occasional exclusive. You're going to see maybe, what, 4 to 6 retail exclusives from them a year probably. It's not going to be like the PS3 was, because the PS3 needed to do that because they were getting stomped on so badly by the Xbox 360. Now, the Xbox One is in a position where, you know, it didn't look like they were going to get superior multi-platform games, but if Sony is pushing these developers to do 1080p and is struggling to do that, then Xbox One can swoop in there and take the superior multi-platform games. It's happened with Strider, it's happened with Thief, it's happened with multiple games already, and what's to say it wouldn't happen again in the future, you know what I mean? This is something to keep an eye on in the future as far as that goes, and I think as far as the power concern goes, just on paper, the PS4 is obviously much more powerful, or I wouldn't say much more, but it's more powerful. The Xbox One has more room to grow, a lot more upside. The future, anyway, looks a lot brighter as far as finding out you know, where the power and things like that. Whereas last generation, the PS3, because it was difficult to program for, ended up getting really good looking games late. The Xbox One could do this as well with tiled resources and things like that. So I'm not saying that the PS4 is less powerful. It's definitely more powerful. I'm saying the Xbox One has a brighter future as far as what developers are going to be able to do. There's going to be a lot of little tricks with the ESRAM. There's going to be a lot of little things you can do with some flexible memory and things like that. And I think that people that are just counting out the Xbox One or just saying, hey, resolution this or resolution that, are going to, you know, be in for a little, you know, shock, I guess. You know what I mean? It's a little shell shock. I think that the Xbox One has a lot of power to it. Obviously, 8 cores, 8 gigs of RAM with the ESRAM and all that stuff. And then as the couple years go by and internet gets better, you're going to see a lot of things take advantage of doing cloud processing, which people joke and go, oh, the power of the cloud and all this stuff. It's a real thing, and you can do things. You can offload things that might take up regular RAM. So what they can do is take tiled resources and take strain off the regular RAM. You can process things in the cloud and take things off the processor and things like that, which basically frees up a lot of things to do all these anti-aliasing and things like that, which is what they did with Thief and why it looks better on the Xbox One despite being only 900p. Which, again, resolution is meaningless. You know what I mean? It's just a meaningless thing that people like to use for arguments and things like that. People will use whatever they can to win an argument. For me personally, you know, I feel vindicated because people are like, the Xbox One version is just as bad. You're going to have to eat crow, crappy. You're going to have to eat crow. And I'm like, well, let's find out, you know. I mean, I'm not a NeoGAF insider, although I'm more right than those supposed insiders are. You know what I mean? I'm not wrong often, and if I am, I'll admit to it. Because that's how I am. I'm not some random troll. I do research. I don't just go spout off Xbox One #1 and all this kind of shit. That's not me. If you think that's who I am, then you need to go back and take a listen to what I say. I'm very well researched. I know what I'm talking about. I study these things. Gaming is a big part of my life. You know, I wouldn't steer anybody wrong. You know, this is my own personal opinion, and I do like to spark debate. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And this happens to be something that I don't feel like I'm wrong on. Xbox One owners are pretty much sitting pretty as far as I'm concerned, because if you notice, Xbox One's getting all the news lately. They're getting the updates. It's constantly evolving, and Sony is just kind of sitting pat and selling consoles like crazy, even though they haven't announced anything since February of 2013, really. I mean, they're just sitting back and taking it all in, you know what I'm saying? Whereas Microsoft, you got a plethora of indies coming out in March. You've got over 200 people signed up for that. You've got Project Spark Beta coming out this week. You've got Titanfall coming out. You had Garden Warfare just released. I mean, it's a huge, huge upside to Xbox right now, and it's a good time to be an Xbox One owner. And I just want to say that the power debate isn't as open as closed as people want to make it out to be. Alright, that's about all the time for this video. I appreciate all the subscribers, man. It just really blows my mind that so many people like my channel and the content. Thanks for everything, man. Crap Gamer, out.